Letter 1. Resident. Part 2. I read and reread the letter several times, attempting to comprehend what it said. The yellow morning dawn eventually faded into the evening dusk while I sat in my living room drinking in contemplation. The letter lay resting on my coffee table, face up, with the bloody evidence and daunting message exposed. That was my dilemma. Next to it sat the card from the strangely hostile detective. Do I call him? Do I wait? I threw my head back and finished off my beer with a few large chugs, the ceiling staying in my field of view with each large gulp. My stomach gurgled and I belched loudly as I leaned forward to read the message one more time. Resident. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. You may understand, but you will never know, until the day you peer inside and find the darkness within. Signed, Killer. I heard that poem before, from somewhere, and made a mental note to look it up. Thought of this whole mess was terrifying. The same person who created the blood spot on my ceiling is completely aware of me. I put the letter back onto the table and headed to my sad excuse for a kitchen for another bottle. The police lights and sirens from earlier that morning were long gone at that point, but I noticed something suspicious on the street from my small apartment window. Across the street, in the empty lot of an abandoned building, sat parked a completely conspicuous black Crown Vic. The vehicle was occupied by a suit-clad figure with a pair of dark shades covering his face in the dark, rainy evening weather. I took a swig of my beer as I hunched over, crunching the blinds to get a better look. The man in the vehicle glanced in my direction of my building, before looking down at his wristwatch. He looked back over again, but must have noticed my suspicion, because he quickly set the keys to the ignition and sped away. Sleep never came to me that night. My entire day was spent drinking and scrubbing the incriminating bloodstain on my ceiling, while contemplating the letter. The psychopath who created it was still on the loose, and worse yet, he left a love letter just for me. My ragged couch and racing mind made it impossible to sleep, so I decided to head across the street to the diner. I grabbed my hoodie from the hall closet and zipped it to my chest as I walked out into the rainy, wet midnight air. The smiling face of my friend and neighbor, Darla, always made my day. She also happened to be the only waitress at the dive I was walking to. The bell hanging from the glass door jingled as I walked in. "Heyo," the fat cook announced half-heartedly from behind a large newspaper. The diner itself was a 50s-style, old-fashioned setup that clearly hadn't been renovated since the 50s. The white tables were now yellowing, with ripped, reddish-brown booths, and an old, dirty black and white tile floor. I took my usual seat at my usual booth and waited eagerly for my usual waitress. Darla knows my order, but always asks me anyway. It was like a game we both enjoyed. She got me through a lot of hard times, and although we only seen each other at the diner or in the hall of our apartment building, I could sense us becoming closer. The wait was longer than usual, and I checked my wristwatch repeatedly. 11:25, 11:26, and again 11:27. She usually has a few more hours until she's off, and the place was empty. I figured she had taken a smoke break, so I looked up to the old television on the counter. A rerun of Newsreel was playing on the late night news. Footage from the scene I witnessed earlier shot through my head and made me cringe. I held my fingers to my temples and asked the cook, "Hey buddy, where's Darla?" The cook put his newspaper down with a large sigh and walked over to the edge of my table, notepad in hand. "She didn't show. What do they have?" he asked, not skipping a beat. I looked up at the grease-stained, apron-clad, fat, dark-haired bowling man for what felt like an hour before he finally looked past his notepad, down at me with a single raised eyebrow. "What do you mean she didn't show?" I asked. The scruffy slob just shrugged his shoulders and looked at me expectantly. I got up abruptly and brushed past him, back through the glass door and once again into the rainy city night. I made it back to my apartment, feeling much more anxious than I should have. My stomach was pitted with a rotting feeling. As I walked over to my coffee table to grab my phone, I scrolled through the contacts until I found her name, Darling Darla. I dialed and waited. The phone rang 4 or 5 times before I hung up and redialed. Again I waited and received no response. I tried one last time and decided to let it ring longer than I had previously. The tone rang in my ear for a minute before I noticed a faint muffled sound coming from within my apartment. It was coming from the small coat closet near my front door. I turned, looked, and listened. The phone on my ear ringing corresponded with a faint buzz. My ears burned as my anxiety levels quickened. Each footstep closer to my closet created another breathless moment. I opened it up abruptly, half expecting something to jump out at me, but nothing came. Instead, a faint glow and muffled buzz came from the pocket of my black winter pea coat. I reached my hand inside the pocket and found the source. A cell phone with my name and a red heart next to it displayed on the screen. Darla's cell phone. My heart pounded in my head. What the hell was that doing in my coat pocket? Thank you all for listening. If you're interested to hear why he was so confused, why the man was following him, or what that cell phone was doing in his coat pocket, like and subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for next week's update.